Start a little earlier and see if we can exploit the most of the time that we have for this very entertaining evening. It's wonderful to see you all here, and wonderful to see such a great range of ages and interests. So we hope you enjoy it. Our speaker today is Ha-Joon Chang, who is Research Professor of Economics at the School of Oriental and African Studies, and he's going to talk about his new book, Edible Economics. I have a copy here, which I've just read and really enjoyed. He's written other books, which I'm sure you'll take an opportunity to enjoy. They're too many to list, really, but 23 Things They Don't Tell You About Capitalism, The User's Guide, Bad Samaritans, Kicking Away the Ladder, Development Strategy in a Historical Perspective, and of course, Edible Economics. So without further ado, I'm going to hand over to him to take us through a synopsis of the key themes that he's raised in his book. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Jackie, for that very kind introduction. And thank you all for coming on this wet evening. I had to trudge around London a bit today, so I even put on my working boots, so the conditions are not that favorable for traveling, and you're all here. Thank you very much. Okay, so I want to talk about this book, which came out in October. It brings together two of my greatest passions, economics and food. I left my native South Korea back in 1986 to study economics at the University of Cambridge. My spoken English was rather poor. Racial prejudices, cultural prejudices, they were rampant, and the weather was rubbish. But the most difficult thing was the food. Before coming to Britain, I didn't realize that food could be so bad. Everything was boiled to death, and everything was bland. Nothing foreign was eaten. The food culture of Britain in the late 1980s, well, at least to me, is epitomized by this then rampant, now defunct pizza chain called Pizza Land, which offered its customers an option to have their pizzas topped with a baked potato. They're so worried that the customers will be traumatized by eating foreign food like pizza. They had to give them a security blanket. Here's your baked potato. Hold on to it if you cannot deal with pizza. And especially, I couldn't believe that Britain's national enemy, well, food-wise, was garlic, which is the essence of life for Koreans. In the book, you will find that Koreans, on a per capita basis, consume 7.5 kilograms of garlic per year. The famous garlic eaters, the French, consume only 200 grams. Italians consume 600 grams. So we don't just eat garlic, we process it in industrial quantity. We are garlic monsters. And as the very first page of the book will tell you, it actually features in our foundation myth. And then I was told that the Queen so hated it that she banned people from using the garlic ever when she's in one of her many residences. And a lot of British people at the time considered eating garlic an affront to civility, if not a threat to civilization. So what have I done? Of course, the food scene in Britain today is completely different. You can, especially in London, get almost anything. A few months ago, I was walking by some food court in Covent Garden, and they were selling Uzbek dumplings. Can you believe it? Yeah? The other day, I was passing near Holloway Road and saw a Georgian restaurant. Yeah? An Azeri friend of mine, someone from Azerbaijan, told me that there are a couple of very nice Azeri restaurants in London. I haven't tried them yet, but So today, London is arguably the most interesting and diverse place to eat in the world. Yeah? Now, my theory is that the Brits, somewhere in the late 1990s, had this collective epiphany one day and realized that their food sucks. Yeah? No, but this was a great thing. Yeah? Once you reject your own food, you become totally broad-minded. Yeah, once you think that British food is not that good, then why should you prefer Mexican over Korean or Indian over Turkish? Anything tastes is fine. So this is one of the best things that happened in this country. You go to countries with great local food, Italy, France, it's actually not easy to find anything else. Yeah. You might have, one bad Chinese restaurant, one overpriced Japanese restaurant, couple of falafel places, but you don't get that very much else. So actually, paradoxically, Britain has become one of the best places to eat in the world in terms of the diversity and the quality of the cuisines on offer. So I'm very happy that these days, but unfortunately, while my food universe was expanding, my other universe, namely economics, was being sucked into a metaphorical black hole. Because before the 1980s, several different traditions in economics was competing with and learning from each other. As I discussed in my last book, the Economics User's Guide, until the 70s, many different schools of economics, at least 9 major schools, and easily another dozen if you also include smaller schools or split bigger schools into smaller ones, like the institutionalist school or the Schumpeterian school or the Keynesian school. You could easily have 20 different schools of economics. So until the 70s, all of these different schools were competing with each other, sometimes engaged in a death match. Yeah? In the 1920s and 30s, the Marxists and the Austrians had a debate called the so-called calculation debate. Yeah? Basically trying to theoretically debate whether running a centralized, centrally planned economy like the Soviet Union was actually possible. Yeah? I mean, of course, the Soviet Union had already existed, but the central planning process was not fully refined, and there were a lot of problems. But some Marxist economists argue that this will be resolved with the development of computers and mathematical programming techniques and so on. In the 1960s and the 70s, the Keynesians and the neoclassical economists in the two Cambridges, the neoclassical economists in the Cambridge, Massachusetts, economists at Harvard and MIT, and on the one end, and the Keynesian economists in Cambridge, England, had a big debate on the capital theory. I mean, we don't need to talk about the exact content. So there was sometimes it's the death match. Yeah? But other times, the debate was more kind of, if you like, pragmatic, the debating about the particular policy solution from different perspectives, And yeah, I mean, they were all proud of their own traditions, but they were willing to engage with other people sometimes there was intentional, sometimes unintentional fusing of theory in the way that fusion food is emerging in Britain today. Huh? I mean, someone told me that there's a fusion Korean Peruvian restaurant in Birmingham. Huh? I want to go there. Huh? You know, Peruvian food itself is the ultimate fusion food because it's got the Iberian root, the Inca root, but also Chinese and Japanese influence because in the early 20th century, a lot of Chinese and the Japanese went there as indentured laborers. You know? So they have this, you know, basically when someone asked me what is Peruvian food like, I said it's a mixture of Mexican and Japanese. You know? That's the closest I can tell you. But, you know, so Peruvian food mixed with Korean food, you know, I really want to, you know, take a look at it. You know? So, you know, economics before the 80s was a bit like British food scene today. But since the 80s, one school of economics known as neoclassical economics has come to dominate the subject almost completely. And that has led to a very unhealthy state of the subject. And I'm not saying that neoclassical economics is particularly bad, you know. Like all other schools, it has its strengths and weaknesses. I mean, this is a table from the user's guidebook. You know, all these different schools are, you know, interested in different things. They conceptualize the economy in different ways. They have different theories of how people behave, how enterprises behave, how technologies evolve. And they have different political and ethical values. Yeah? So it is very natural that they are good at different things. Yeah? I mean, if you want to, you know, I don't know, study regulation of the pricing of the utilities like electricity and water, yes, neoclassical economics is the best. Yeah? But if you want to understand innovation and technological change, you have to learn from Schumpeter. Yeah? I mean, Schumpeterians might be good at talking about big structural changes like technological changes, but they are not very good at talking about the short-term macroeconomic fluctuations, which the Keynesians are the best at, yeah? And so on. Yeah? But unfortunately, one particular school has become dominant, and that has made economics boring and unhealthy, like the British food scene up to the mid-1990s. Huh? Now, I believe that it is important for everyone, every citizen, to know economics, not in this kind of homogenized, you know, one taste kind of economics, but this truly diverse economics. Because my view is that in a capitalist economy, unless everyone knows at least some economics, democracy is meaningless. Yeah? In a capitalist economy, we are forced to justify everything in terms of its economic value. Yeah? And I've even met some British people who try to defend the monarchy on the ground that it brings in tourist revenue. Yeah? You know, I'm not a monarchist. I'm actually an anti-monarchist. But what a demeaning way of defending the institution that you think is at the foundation of your society. Yeah? It's come to that. Yeah? So in that kind of society, if you don't know economics, actually you don't know what you are voting for. Yeah? Yeah, so people, you know, in 2000, a lot of Americans voted for George W. Bush, saying that he looks like a kind of guy that I could have a beer with. Yeah? Well, on that qualification, I could have become the president of the United States. You know, I can have beer with anyone. You know. People voted for Boris Johnson saying that, oh, he may be a rascal, but a lovable rascal. Yeah? What kind of criterion is that? Yeah? I mean, this happens because people do not understand what the government is doing. Yeah? It's making all these decisions about your jobs and pensions and your household mortgages, house mortgages, wages and everything on the basis of a very narrow range of economic theories. And unless you understand these theories, that theory and other alternative theories, you are really like when you go to the polling booth, you are really voting for your favorite candidate in talent show. So it is extremely important that everyone learns some economics. Yeah? It's actually, in my view, citizens' duty. Yeah? But unfortunately, economics is, I must admit, boring. Yeah? I mean, it's deliberately made to look difficult. Yeah? By economists, all professionals have an interest in making what they do look difficult. Yeah? I mean, plumbers come and they pretend that it's the most difficult job in the world. Yeah, I mean, for you, of course, that is extremely difficult, but for professionals, it may not be. But they have a self-interest in making it look difficult. So in my earlier book, 23 Things They Don't Tell You About Capitalism, I stuck my neck out and said 95% of economics is common sense, made to look difficult with the use of mathematics, jargons, and statistics. Yeah? And even the remaining 5% can be explained in its essence if you, as a professional economist, try to kind of do that. Yeah? Of course, I'm not saying that all the technicalities can be understood or need to be understood by ordinary citizens, but it is within our reach. But people have this aversion to economics. Yeah? Oh, it's too complicated, too dry, too boring. So what I'm trying to do in this book is to basically bribe my potential readers with interesting stories about food, and keeping my fingers crossed that they keep reading because the story is interesting, and before they know it, they by mistake keep on reading and read the economics. Yeah? Yeah, so in that sense, the food stories here are a bit like the ice cream that some of your mothers might have offered you to entice you into eating your greens. Yeah? But my bribery is better, because the ice cream comes first. Yeah? So if you read the food stories or eat ice cream, and if you don't want to eat the rest, you can stop. Yeah? Of course, I hope that you keep on reading. Yeah? So I try to draw in readers with stories about food. However, the one word of warning is that it's not a book about, if you like, economics of food, how food is produced, traded, consumed, and wasted. Yeah? The food stories are usually not really related to the main economic stories. Yeah? So how the book is organized is, each chapter is named after food ingredients, chocolate, lime, chili, garlic, acorn. You didn't know that you can eat acorn, but Koreans eat a lot of acorns. We make them into this vegetable jelly called dotori muk. Some Korean restaurants in London serve it, so have a try. So each chapter is named after a food ingredient. And it starts with some stories about that food item. But before you know it, the food stories are somehow transformed into economic stories through what I call the Simpsons approach to writing. Yeah? You know, all Simpsons episodes, I haven't watched them for some years, so maybe they are different now. But all Simpsons episodes start with a short story, usually involving Bart Simpson, lasting for maybe 30 seconds, maybe one and a half minutes, which may turn out to be crucial for the main story, but which may have nothing to do with the main story. Yeah? So it's like that. I mean, in most chapters, the initial food stories are not really related to the main economic story, although sometimes they are. And also that the way in which the food story kind of is transformed into the economic story is like traveling down the rabbit hole, as the famous expression from Alice in Wonderland goes. Yeah? So I have a chapter that starts with Luis Suarez, the famous Uruguayan football player, who is a brilliant player, but is more famous for biting other players than his football skills. And then somehow it goes through corned beef, and then it ends with a discussion of the international trading system. Yeah? I have another chapter called Lime, which starts with the story of scurvy and ends with the economics of climate change. There's a chapter called Carrot that starts with the story of the carrot cake and then ends with the problems with the intellectual property rights system of today, and so on. Yeah? So, well, that's part of the fun as I see it, you know. I mean, because you don't know what's the economic story you're going to get at the end when you start the food story. Yeah? Because some of these food stories are like, you know, even the personal, if you like. You know? Okay, so you know, I could go into one or two chapters to discuss the contents and to show you how I managed this weird transformation process. But I think that it's probably better if you actually read the chapters yourselves. And I would just like to conclude at this point, because I want to have as much time for discussion as possible, that I mean, even though at one level my kind of the analogy between food and economics is kind of rather the idiosyncratic, there is an important point of the confluence between the two. You know, just think about it. I mean, when it comes to food, you are encouraged to eat a diverse diet, yeah? And you will find that your eating experience far more interesting if you drew upon different culinary cultures. Yeah? You know, whether you're cooking or eating out, you know, it is really great to be able to one day eat Korean food, next day Ethiopian, you know, another day one of these new vegan recipes, you know. It's really great to do that. And many people would agree that this is a better way to eat. Yeah? more interesting, more balanced, healthier, and so on. But when it comes to economics, economists say there's only one right food. I mean, it's that quite crazy. I mean, these days, most students don't even know that there are different schools of economics. Yeah, they might have heard of Keynes and maybe Marx, but that's about it. They don't know that there are literally dozens of different schools of economics, which all have something to offer. Of course, you can have your favorite, in the same way that we can have our favorite type of cuisine, favorite kind of ingredients and so on. But it's not as if kind of eating just one kind of food, one type of cuisine that is a good thing. So if we want to have a healthy economy and meaningful democracy, we need to learn a variety of economic theories without prejudices and learn to apply them in an imaginative way. Because sticking to this very bland and monotonous diet of one economic theory is making us fail to see many problems, and become narrow in terms of coming up with solutions to even problems that you are seeing. And also most importantly, it prevents you from seeing that all these economic theories have underlying ethical and political judgments. Because these theories are presented as science, like physics or chemistry. And the ethical and political implications of these are not discussed. What separates natural sciences and social sciences, including economics, is that I don't know that the physical particles don't say, "Oh, I'm supposed to behave in this way, but I'm not going to do that because it's ethically wrong." Chemical molecules don't say, "Well, we are all supposed to behave in this way, but what if we all went the other way? Wouldn't that make the world a better place?" No, seriously, I mean, that's what social sciences, including economics, should be about, debating what is the most valuable thing in the society and how to achieve it in a way that respects people's rights and in the least conflictual way. That recently we had a lot of debates about the budget in this country, following the famous double act, Trust Kwarteng, the comedy show. But in the debate, I just couldn't believe that all these economists never really mentioned things like the fact that there are literally hundreds of thousands of kids that are starving, bringing a slice of moldy bread for lunch to school, stealing food from their mates. Can you believe it? I mean, we are living in one of the wealthiest societies that humanity has created. And you have that kind of situation, and that is not even really debated. Because economists have lost their moral compass. So the reason why we need to learn different economic theories is not just because they give solutions to different solutions, and that kind of open up more possibilities, but also because they make you think in different ways about our society and the goals that our society have to pursue. So on that note, let me finish my presentation and invite you to ask questions, make comments. I'll take my own questions. Please try to be brief because there are a lot of people in the room who might want to ask questions. Thank you very much. Yeah, so there'll be a microphone going around, so please raise your hand and then I'll direct the microphone to the questioner. Please. Yeah, the microphones are malfunctioning, so
That was great. Thank you very much. Just to kick us off, when I started studying economics, we did have Marxism in particular as a really good counterpoint and a way to criticise the alternative view. So, simple question: what led to that convergence to neoclassical economics in your mind?
Yeah. Okay. When the microphone comes, I might collect a few questions together in case there's an overlap and so on. But yeah, let's talk about this. Yes, how the mainstream economists, that is the neoclassical economists, would present it would be that, well, we basically survive the struggle because we are the fittest. Yeah? So that we won, those guys lost, they are useless. Yeah? So that many neoclassical economists that say that, well, those people who, like Ha-Joon Chang, who call for more pluralistic approach to economics, they are like people who believe in the creationism or homeopathy. Yeah? But I mean, of course, this is an absurd view of what social science is. I mean, there is no such thing as scientific victory in social sciences because, as I keep saying, so many things are predicated on your political and ethical values. So that's the start. But neoclassical economics, it has its strengths. I mean, because it deliberately defines problems in a very narrow way. I mean, that everything needs to be quantified, and they pretend that there's no political and ethical issues that are underlying economics by basically assuming a very kind of narrow market-oriented view of the economy and so on. Because they can be precise, more precise, I mean, they look more scientific. Yeah? But, as John Maynard Keynes allegedly said once, I would rather be, broadly right than precisely wrong. Yeah? So there's that. Yeah? And another reason is, neoclassical economics that basically starts by accepting the existing distribution of income, wealth, and power as given, and then try to find a way to make social improvement. Yeah? So it's not against social improvement, but its view is that this is known as the idea of Pareto improvement, named after this early 20th century half Italian, half French economist Vilfredo Pareto. They believe that a social change can be called an improvement only when it hurts no one, while making some people better off. No, this is a very laudable ethical position because if you believe that hurting one person is okay, why not 10? Why not 50? Why not a million? Yeah? So it's a noble attempt to defend individual rights against the tyranny of the majority, but at the same time, this makes it extremely conservative. Yeah? Because however unjust, wasteful, and brutal the existing social order may be, you cannot touch the privileged even by a hair. Yeah? So, it has that unfortunate conservative bias, which makes it very palatable to the people who are benefiting from the status quo. Yeah? Because these people would not recommend any social change that will hurt those who are already benefiting. Yeah? I mean, it's a bit more complicated. There's the idea of compensation and so on, but that's basically what it is. So it has become politically far more acceptable to the elite, which means that if you are a neoclassical economist, you get more, research funding, more media coverage, more recognition, politically especially. So, through this process, they have come to almost totally dominate the economic scene. It's a very complicated story. I mean, someone needs to write a 500-page book to tell the full stories. But I mean, this is the gist of how I see it. Yeah. Thank you. Anyone else? The lady here, and then the gentleman in the green shirt. Yeah.
I've read your book and I've absolutely adored your book.
Thank you.
I'm a nutrition writer, so I'm here with a food hat on rather than economics hat on. And a thought I have about food, which isn't specifically addressed in your book, is the fact that in our society today, in the UK, we spend a smaller proportion of average incomes on food than ever in history.
Yeah.
And also, only the US spends a smaller percentage of average incomes on food than the UK. Every European country, especially the French, the Greeks, the Italians, all spend much more percentage of average incomes on foods. Yeah. So you've hinted that some people are very poor and have, eat moldy bread, etc. But I'm anxious that as a nutritionist, we're thinking about better health. And also the big theme in food, of course, today is also better environmental sustainability in relation to food production. So food production at the moment is just fantastically efficient and industrialized and optimized. But we're looking at trying to move slightly back from that to support environment and health. And that can only mean more expensive food. It cannot be cheaper than it is today. So how do we square that circle of food has to become more expensive if it's to be healthier and better for the environment, but bearing in mind that some people are poor and don't have enough money to spend on food?
No, thank you. Great question. So maybe we can get one or two more questions. The gentleman in the back.
Thank you. I'm a great fan of your other books. I've not read this yet, and also I love kimchi.
Oh, good.
I love garlic, and I make my own kimchi actually.
Oh, wow.
Loads of garlic, loads of turmeric. But just on the economics, isn't there an alternative view that these other schools of economics haven't been just thrown out and excluded, and that the only school is neoclassical economics, but instead that they've been assimilated as part of the canon of economics? So Keynesianism and Schumpeterianism is an integral part of the economics that we use alongside neoclassical economics.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So I'll take the question and then do the next one.
You mentioned that you thought it's a citizen's duty to understand economics so people can be more informed about their vote.
Yeah.
And Mr. Sunak has recently made the point, the Prime Minister's made the point that maths should be compulsory in school until 18. Do you think economics should be compulsory in school until 18? And I say that as an economics teacher, so there's a bit of a self-interest.
Thank you. Yeah. Okay. So first, addressing the food question. Yeah, I think you're right. I mean, better food, better for health, better for the environment, better food that has to be more expensive. Yeah. There's no other way. But on the other hand, we could even with the same budget and more expensive food, we could eat better. Because if we make it more interesting, with ingredients that has higher nutrition value and cook it from scratch and so on, you can even with the same budget create that more varied diet, healthier diet. However, this requires other social reforms. Because why do people use unhealthy processed food? Because they don't have time. I mean, working hour needs to be reduced. And also, a lot of people live in the kind of food desert. I mean, especially in America, that has to be changed through regulation. And the different types of urban planning. So, yes, I mean, the challenges are a lot more complicated than what we normally think. We could, try to. Well, basically, the point that I'm trying to make is that you cannot make these changes simply by working on the food systems. You need other things, changes in the working patterns, urban planning, regulation of supermarkets and so on. As for the other two economic questions, I mean, the neoclassical economists claim that what few insights that are worth incorporating from other schools have already been incorporated into today's mainstream economics, but that is actually wrong, because these different schools have fundamentally different worldviews, and you cannot just lift this concept and kind of bastardize it and try to fit it into another system of thought. I mean, the greatest example is Keynes' idea of uncertainty. Keynes' view is that basically the kind of rational calculation that neoclassical economists say we are making is impossible because there's a total uncertainty in this world. And it's not just Keynes, actually. Of all people, Friedrich Hayek has a similar view. But that doesn't work in neoclassical economics, because in neoclassical economics, everything is in theory calculable. Because without that, there will be no rational choice, which is at the center of neoclassical economics. So they may use words like uncertainty, but what they mean is actually calculable risk, the kind of calculation that the actuaries do to calculate your insurance premium. So they might have stolen ideas about innovation from Schumpeter, but once again, in Schumpeter's view, the kind of neoclassical theory of competition, the idea of perfect competition and so on, is kind of, well, not totally irrelevant, but insignificant compared to competition through innovation. But if you fully embrace Schumpeter's idea of innovation, it doesn't fit into neoclassical economics. So the term has been borrowed, but it's a rather different idea of innovation, and so on. So, that basically what we have to realize is that these different economic theories are different systems of thought. They have very different assumptions about the nature of the world, nature of human beings, the way that society functions, and it is extremely difficult, if not necessarily impossible, to lift one or two concepts that looks attractive from other theoretical system and transplant it into another system. So I'll leave it there. Should economics be made compulsory? Maybe, yeah. No, but as part of a bigger kind of civic education, what do you have to do as a citizen? You need to learn a bit of economics. You need to learn the ethics. You need to learn how the British political system works. You need to understand how different people live. I mean, from the super rich to the illegal immigrants. So as a part of this balanced civic education system, I'm all in favor of teaching people economics throughout their education. Unfortunately, when people say we need to promote economics, what they mean is we need to brainwash our children with the market economics. So if it's that kind of economics, I don't want it to be taught. But as a part of balanced civic education, I think it's crucial that people learn about economics. Have I? Okay, the next round. Yes, Jackie first.
Thank you. Very interesting. I'm a health economist and chose that as my specialism 40 years ago because it allowed me to escape the neoclassical economics that was coming because it really focused on where market fails at every level.
Absolutely.
I wondered whether you had any thoughts about health economics. I must admit, when I saw the book, I thought it was going to be about diet and health.
No.
So but pleasantly, it wasn't.
Yeah.
Very good.
Thank you. Anyone else over there? And then the lady in front. So first in the back.
So with neoclassical economics having dominated since about I think you said the 80s, how can we start to effectively implement other schools of economic thought to start tackling issues?
Yeah. Thank you. And the lady here.
If you were put in charge of the government budget, what measures would you take to tackle the cost of living crisis?
Right. Thank you for those questions. Well, first of all, health economics. I do not know much about it, but these days, neoclassical economists have occupied health economics as well. I'm told. So, it's sadly kind of become narrower and more kind of if you like commercially oriented. But once again, I think the problem with neoclassical occupation of these different subject areas is that, I'm not saying that neoclassical economists necessarily have kind of evil design to, look at only things that benefit the rich and so on, but the very way the theory is construed, is based on a very particular view of what a good society is. And in terms of health economics, everything is supposed to be quantified, and therefore, you put value on human life. Which sometimes you have to do, but once you begin to do that, then everything becomes profit, money, efficiency, And that's right. And now, I mean, with big data and so on, you know, health record are monetized, and so without necessarily meaning to be evil, I mean, it has basically taken out the most the important things about healthcare. Huh? It's about, you know, taking care of each other, you know, living together, having high quality of life and so on. And somehow in this process, those things are either completely left out or somehow monetized into something insignificant. And yeah, so I don't know. I mean, yeah, I'm not against, you know, neoclassical economists are working on health issues, but you know, there are other perspectives, you know, the feminist perspective, for example, that sees that all these things from a completely different point of view, and all these other, all these different views have to be looked at together before we can make the balanced decisions. Yeah? So I'm afraid, yeah, I mean, but in terms of the health economics, I think there's a glaring example of how neoclassical economics is particularly bad at dealing with health, because the United States, where that kind of thinking is dominant, I mean, spends the highest proportion of the GDP on healthcare, by far, something like 17, 18% of GDP compared to, sorry? Is it? Oh my God. Compared to the like Ireland, I think it's only 7%, Britain 11%, nine, sorry, yeah. Yeah, okay, yeah. And then Switzerland maybe 12%, yeah. But the US has the worst health record in the rich world, yeah. So there's a proof that it doesn't work. But, you know, never mind that record, because those who have money and power want that kind of approach to health. Yeah. Okay. So if other schools are necessary, how do you revive them? Was your question, and it is a big challenge, because I mean, many countries economics now is treated synonymously with neoclassical economics. There are few countries where it is not that not the case. Brazil is one exception, and to a lesser extent, Japan, Turkey, Italy. But yeah, almost everywhere else that neoclassical economics is synonymous with economics. There are very few non-neoclassical economists left in economics departments in this country, in the US. Although you know, other types of economists are still quite large in numbers, except that they are not in the economics department. Yeah? They are in geography, they are in the development studies, they are in the international relations, they are in business school. So actually, it's not as bad at first looks, yeah? But still it's a challenge. And yeah, I think the students have realized this first, that before the rest of the economics profession acknowledged it, because after the 2008 financial crisis, especially in this country, but spread onto other countries, young students have organized themselves into this movement called Rethinking Economics, which demanded changes in the economics curriculum. And yeah, I mean, of course, there was a huge resistance from the academic establishment, but some changes have been made. Yeah. So, for example, in Cambridge, where I used to teach, thanks to student campaign, this new subject well, the revival of old subjects that really new subject called the history and philosophy of economics was introduced. Yeah? I mean, some of the Dutch students doing this movement have written a new economics textbook. Yeah? I mean, some of the rethinking economics that the students have formed this organization called Economy, which does citizens' economic education. So things are happening, but once again, I mean, the scale of resources that neoclassical economists have in their bag are vastly superior to what non-neoclassical economists have. So it's going to take a long time, and unfortunately, another few financial crises before things can significantly change. I mean, actually, that is a great example of how entrenched the neoclassical economics has become in the present power structure. Can you believe that a particular group of professionals, I don't know whether they are accountants or homeopaths or whatever, can you believe any group creating multiple financial crises that have ruined the lives of literally tens of millions of people all around the world, being still allowed to practice? Yeah? I mean, if other people did this, they would have been, the kind of defrocked. Yeah, they would have been had their kind of the qualification taken away. Yeah? No, I mean, I'm not talking about the trivial examples. For example, there was this massive hedge fund called LTCM, long-term capital management, which lost huge amount of money in the Russian financial crisis of 1999. Yeah? Two of the, I'm not just talking about advisors, two of the partners of this firm were two Nobel Prize winning economists, yeah? Scholz and Black, who 2 years before that got Nobel Prize for their work on asset pricing. Yeah? And then they lost huge amount of money. Basically, Alan Greenspan had to lock up the presidents of 12 creditor banks to this hedge fund to force them to lend more money to this fund, because otherwise the whole U.S. the financial system was in danger of collapsing. Yeah? And these people still were fitted. Yeah? They went on to manage another fund which went bankrupt again in 2008. Yeah? But the profession, I mean, has not barred these people. That they are still called Nobel laureates. Yeah? The profession hasn't lost credibility. Yeah? I mean, that's the power of this group of economists. Yeah? That is really mind-boggling when you think about it. Yeah? I mean, just imagine anyone else making that kind of mistake over and over and over and over and over and over again over 3.5 decades, and still, Anyway. Well, first of all, to your question, I do not want to be made a government minister or anything like that. Not because I'm, one of those academics who say, politics is dirty, I'm above it, but because, I really don't like this practice of, hiring people to run countries when they have at most run a department in a university. Yeah? They just don't have the necessary skills. Yeah? So let's start with that. But yes, I mean, the cost of living crisis basically is the distributional question. Yeah? There's no huge mystery about it. Yeah? Because of these changes in various conditions, which the ordinary people cannot control. The energy companies are making huge profits. Yeah? I mean, some of the suppliers are making huge profits. Yeah? I mean, why can't we tax them? Yeah? Of course, the overall cost has risen for most countries. Of course, oil-producing countries are having a ball, but for most countries, the overall price has risen. That's true. Yeah? So everyone will have to spend less. Yeah? But the way that this burden is falling at the moment is totally unfair. Hmm? So that if you are the government with real care for the vast majority of population, you will put price controls. Yeah? You will impose windfall taxes. Yeah? You will give more subsidies to low-income people. Yeah? There are so many things you can do. Cost of living crisis is not like, I don't know, rain, Well, even rain is affected by what humans do, but, it's not a natural phenomenon. It's kind of a result of a very particular economic structure and very particular political orientation of the ruling parties. Yeah? And I mean, the most dangerous thing is to think that something is beyond our control. Yeah? Because nothing is, when it comes to human society. Yeah? We don't have full control. Even the most powerful government cannot fight the international capital market in the death battle. Yeah? But even that can over time be changed. Because there was a time when international capital market was very, very small. Because most countries are very heavily regulated their financial sectors. So in the very long run, very few things are beyond our control. So to recognize that we can change things is the first step towards making the change. Because what happens very often is that to be told that no, there's no way you can change this. It's an inevitable phenomenon. The march of history. Automation is happening. You are all going to be useless, so get ready for it. Once you start accepting that, what's the point? So please remember, things can be changed. Things have been changed. And given enough time and effort, impossible things have happened. 200 years ago, if you advocated abolition of slavery in America, you are considered at best a dreamer. 100 years ago, this country put women in prison for asking for vote. Only 40 years ago, Margaret Thatcher said anyone who thinks there'll be a black majority rule in South Africa is living in a cloud cuckoo land, which is where she was living. But all of these things have happened. So do not accept that things cannot be changed, things cannot be made better. But of course, in order to make those changes, you need to know why this is happening, why these people are doing these things or not doing certain things, and how to devise an alternative. That's why you need to learn economics. Like it or not, economics has become the language of power. If you don't know it, you cannot change the world. Okay, probably we have time for another round. Gosh, so many hands. Okay, back there. No? Yeah. Okay, please try to be brief.
Thank you for coming to speak with us, and thank you for your contributions to my essays this term. My question is, are there any transnational development policies or maybe projects that you're particularly excited about or that make you hopeful for the field as a whole?
Okay. Yeah, let's, one more down there.
So do you think that the decline or the lack of a competing ideology to capitalism since the fall of the Soviet Union, has that led to the kind of rampant capitalism that we see today? And if so, would it be good for the world if a communist or a socialist nation were to emerge in the future with that as a competitor to capitalism?
Okay, yeah. There was another hand over there, yeah.
Just a simple question. What is your view on capitalism?
Okay. Okay, so let's deal with these three, the second two questions are related, so let me deal with them together first. Yeah, so it is true that the Cold War, by offering the systemic competition, had tamed capitalism quite a lot. And yeah, when the Soviet bloc economies collapsed, there being no apparent alternative, I mean, the extreme form of capitalism was revived, because between the end of the Second World War and say I mean, it started before the collapse of the Soviet Union, but until the early to mid 1980s, you know, most of the world was still very regulated type of capitalism. So there's a certain truth in that, but unfortunately, I don't think that there's any kind of prospect of kind of alternative, better revised form of communism appearing in any in the near future. So we have to work with what we have. But the good news is that, and this moves me into the third question, capitalism has become very diverse since the beginning. Yeah? So in the beginning, it was all kind of totally unregulated, you know, exploiting everything, you know, owning people, you know, using child labor and horrible kind of system. But in the last 200 years, people have fought, yeah, for reform, and yeah, today capitalism is very, very diverse. Yeah? In my 23 things they don't tell you about capitalism, said, paraphrasing what Winston Churchill said about democracy, that capitalism is the worst economic system except for all the others. Yeah? So I don't see a realistic alternative, but you know, as I said, that it can be reformed, it has been reformed. You know, I think that you know, some of the Northern European societies are actually far more socialist than what the Soviet Union was, yeah? In many ways, not in all ways. Yeah? So, I mean, we need to reform these existing forms of capitalism. Once again, there's no single correct model. Yeah? The Swedish capitalism is very different from the Japanese one, which is very different from the Dutch one, and so on. So you know, it's up to us to make it different. Yeah? Now, the transnational changes that give us hope. Well, I think, you know, despite it being way insufficient, I mean, I'm actually quite happy about the progress that we have made with climate change. You know, I mean, of course, we have to do this much, and we have probably done this much, yeah. But still, I thought it was going to be this much, yeah. So at least there's some hope in that because if we keep pushing, something positive might happen. But apart from that, I mean, things have been going bad to worse in terms of international trading rules, intellectual property rights system, international investment agreement. So yeah, I'm afraid that it's not looking good. But the one good news is that developing countries have become, if you like, wiser and more confident. Yeah? Because throughout the 80s and 90s, their economies were devastated first by the debt crisis and then the so-called structural adjustment program imposed by the World Bank and the IMF. The economic growth basically evaporated in Africa and Latin America, but these economies have recovered, and yeah, some of them are becoming more assertive, more confident. So, let's see that we might see some positive changes in the coming years. I mean, we are already seeing some positive changes from that point of view in relation to the climate talk. So let's see. Okay, the last round, I think on this side. Okay, I see 1, 2, 3 hands.
So you've said before about how some people might argue that an improvement is only an improvement if it benefits everyone. And there's also been a question that said that basically rising food prices, which obviously do not benefit everyone, is a bad thing. But as a lot of the Western world is capitalist, would you not say that some level of income and wealth inequality is a necessary part in order for capitalism to actually run effectively?
Mm-hmm.
I just wanted to question you on morality in economics currently, because obviously with the current cost of living.
Can you speak up a bit? Yeah.
Sorry. With the current cost of living crisis, there's obviously been a present focus on people who aren't able to afford necessities and how unfair that is. So, would you say? Do you see a potential future where there's morality in economics to a point where the economy could still function efficiently and while still being fair? If that makes sense?
Yeah. No. Thank you. Okay, the last one. Yeah.
Hi, thank you for your presentation. My question is, do you think there can ever be a day when economics as a discipline can be thought without opposition between different schools of thought and sort of going beyond political ideologies and being taught as a more sort of pragmatic, policy-minded discipline?
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah, in response to the first question, yeah, the neoclassical economics says that a social improvement requires that no one is hurt. It doesn't say that it has to benefit everyone. Yeah? So as far as it benefits someone while not hurting anyone, so that's the criterion. But more important question from you was that, yeah, I mean, some degree of inequality is natural and necessary, but there's a huge range of inequalities that exist in this world. Yeah. So actually, some of the Scandinavian countries used to be even more equal than the Soviet bloc countries in the 1970s. Yeah. I mean, the inequality in countries like South Africa and Brazil are beyond what people who live in Europe can imagine, yeah? And so on. So, there's a huge range. And, yeah, I mean, a lot of studies show that, if inequality is too low, it may be dysfunctional, but if it's too high, it's even more dysfunctional. Yeah? So, no one's saying that we should live like China under Mao Zedong, yeah? Where everyone got the same thing, yeah? And no one was allowed to do anything better than others. I mean, even that is a caricature, but it came pretty close to it. But on the other hand, would anyone justify, what is going on in China today? Huh? Still that hundreds of millions of people live below the United Nations the poverty line, below $1.9 per day, while there apparently is this guy who lives in the replica of White House. I mean, I don't think that kind of inequality does anything functional. Yeah? So, yes, I mean, some inequality is inevitable. Some more might be even functional, but beyond a certain point, it becomes dysfunctional. Yeah? People lacking even in necessities. I mean, that's the problem with the market system, yeah? Because unlike the democracy, where it is one person, one vote, market is $1, one vote, yeah? So however essential something is, it doesn't count if the people who need them don't have money, yeah? Yeah, this is why until the Bill Gates and some billionaires started donating money to malaria research in the last couple of decades, the world was spending 20 times more money doing research on diet drugs than on malaria. Yeah? So basically in the market system, yeah, if you don't have money, you don't count. Yeah? However dire the need might be. Yeah? So we need to fix that. Yeah? So some people want try to fix it by abolishing the market system, but that has other problems. Yeah? So I think that what we have to do is to keep the market system and let it do what it does well, yeah? Promoting innovation and what have you, yeah? And then tax those people to guarantee the basic needs of everyone. Yeah? I mean, that's totally possible. Why not? Yeah? But once again, I mean, the political view is so dominated by this market-based thinking that if a market wouldn't give something to someone, it is somehow justified. Yeah? That's wrong. Yeah? But my view is that it's entirely possible to have a market-based system in which everyone's basic needs are guaranteed. Yeah? And actually, some of the European countries come close to that. Yeah? Scandinavia, Germany, France, Austria. In those countries, because of the strong welfare system, I mean, you don't have the kind of poverty that Britain has, that the US has. Yeah? Okay, finally, yeah, I mean, I actually call myself a pragmatist. Yeah? So one of my favorite quotes is what the former Chinese leader, Mr. Deng Xiaoping, is supposed to have said. Yeah? I don't care whether the cat is black or white as far as it catches mice. Yeah? So, if you actually look at real-world success stories, you will see almost kind of the amazing non-ideological combinations. Yeah? Take the case of Singapore. Yeah? When you read about Singapore in standard textbooks, in financial press like The Economist, the Wall Street Journal, you will only hear that the country practices free trade and welcomes foreign investors. That is true. Yeah? But you will never hear that 90% of the land in Singapore is owned by the government, 85% of housing is provided by government-owned housing corporation, and a staggering 22% of GDP is produced by what they call government-linked corporations. these are corporations in which the government of Singapore has at least 20% ownership, sometimes 100%. Yeah? So basically state-owned enterprises. Yeah? So is Singapore a free market economy or socialist economy? Yeah? You know, I laugh when some Tory party politicians were saying that with Brexit, Britain's going to become Singapore on Thames, yeah? Singapore on the Thames, you know. So are they going to nationalize 90% of land in this country, yeah? You know, people don't know what they're talking about, yeah? So despite that, economists, mainstream economists claiming that what they do is science, they are not ideological, their the world view and research is very ideological. Yeah? So maybe it's actually better to admit that what your ideology is. Yeah, yeah. I mean, say that this is what you believe in, say that this is the theory you use, and it's got this ideological principles, and make it open. Yeah. Rather than pretending that, oh, I'm a scientist, you know, it's value-free, you know, there's no ideology. Yeah? I think that's actually quite dishonest. No? Okay, on the note, let me finish.
So much. Thank you so much. That was, I don't feel so lonely anymore. It's just fantastic.
That's great.
I have a couple of announcements to make before you all disappear, and a few other thank yous. The first announcement is our next event, which is going to be online on the 9th of February, on the power and influence of economists. Oh. So if you found this interesting, register online via our website for the next one. And we are excited to host Glenn Hubbard, the former Deputy Assistant Secretary at the US Department of Treasury, on the 3rd of April, again online. And so if you'd like to register on our website, please do. We've got a bespoke series of events for sixth formers, some of you are here, called the Econ Club, which is expanding learning on the content that you learn in class. And so find out a bit more information about how your school can get involved. That's also on the website. And then my final plea is our Clash of the Titans competition. There's a little leaflet which is on the desk on the way out. I think there are a few left if you haven't already picked one up. It's the one with the QR codes, and it invites you to participate in our annual competition to estimate various economic metrics over the coming year, and if you get it right, you win a prize at the end of the year. So do pick it up, there's some instructions on the leaflets to how to use the QR codes. I'd like to thank the hosts tonight, the Geological Society. This is a fantastic venue. I'm delighted. This is the first one I've managed to come to, and it's a super venue. Thank you, everybody, for your continued support for the ERC. And one final round of applause.